recording. This is pretty conversational. I know Bradley is wrapping up his PhD program and he has lots of exciting things to share with you about SciQuest and how it came to be. So I'm going to promote Emma to a panelist just because she's on the SciStarter team and it's always nice to have additional dialogue. And then let me get the live stream going. Roland, does the live stream show up for you? It's not showing up in my toolbar.
Let me try and promote to panelist.
Oh, I think it's because you're in here as the main host. I'm going to reclaim it so I can get the live stream going.
She joined.
Can you guys hear me okay? I'm just trying to make sure my mic's on.
All right, give us 1 second. We're just getting the live stream going for our attendees. Thank you for your patience. We'll start presenting in just a minute. All right, our live stream should be going. And then if you want to say hello in the chat, feel free. You should be able to select everyone, or you could just chat with the host and panelists, totally up to you. But that being said, hello everybody, my name's Caroline, I'm from the SciStarter team. I also have my colleagues Roland and Emma from SciStarter here as well. Our special guest today is Bradley Alf. He's getting his PhD at NC State, and he's going to talk to you a little bit today about SciQuest, which is a really cool citizen science project. Bradley, before you get going, I kind of have a little, I call it my SitSci month commercial. So I'm going to go ahead and quickly go through those slides so people know why we're here, what Citizen Science Month is, and then I'll pass the mic to Bradley. He'll do an intro about himself, about the SciQuest project, and I think it'll be a great time. So just give me 1 second to get those slides up. And if you all, for those of you who are watching on Facebook, feel free to communicate with us in the Facebook chat. We're eager to hear from you. We're eager to hear your ideas, any cool things that you want to learn today. If you already have questions, you can go ahead and get those questions in the chat. Otherwise, we're just so delighted that you're joining us, that you, care about citizen science, that I know many of you also already participated in SciQuest. So if you've already participated, feel free to let us know that in the chat too. That's important info for us. And if you're tuning in on Facebook, let us know in the Facebook comments if you've already participated in SciQuest. If you're watching on Zoom, let us know in the Zoom chat if you've already participated in SciQuest. We are keeping our eyes peeled for that. Oh gosh, my SciSci Month template slides are not agreeing with me today. Give it 1 second. But it is Citizen Science Month. I'll start with that. It is April 2023. I think Bradley and I have been through quite a few Citizen Science Months together at this point. The first one was in April 2020. And for those of you who haven't heard of Citizen Science Month before, don't be scared. You can still celebrate. It runs all through April. Today's event is a celebration of Citizen Science Month. And also, you don't have to participate in citizen science just in April. You can keep going all year round. Citizen science is an activity for everybody at all times. All right, I think my slides have finally loaded. I'm going to share my screen in just a second, just to give us our little SciSci Month intro. All right, there we go. Share my screen. Oh, and let me make sure I'm sharing the sound. Rookie mistake. Feel like we should learn how to use Zoom by now. Here we go. So hello, everybody. Once again, I'm Caroline from SciStarter. First and foremost, I'm a citizen science enthusiast. What is citizen science? One way we think about it at SciStarter is it's a collaboration between scientists and those of us who are curious, concerned, and motivated to make a difference. Or another way we say this is citizen science allows anybody and everybody to turn their curiosity about the world into real scientific impact, most often by collecting or analyzing data. Data is just information. Data can be words and pictures that you take of your community, or different plants and animals you see, or it can be, numerical measurements like inches of rainfall or temperature. Whatever it is, data is information that we submit to research projects and that we can analyze to help learn something new about the world. Some citizen science projects ask people to analyze data too. It's a really broad field. There are thousands of projects, and you can discover those on SciStarter. So researchers add projects to SciStarter when they're seeking volunteers to help them do their important work. And people like you come to SciStarter because you're curious and you want to be part of something bigger than yourself. You want to participate in an awesome project. So this is SciStarter.org, and there are thousands of opportunities to participate. That being said, sometimes all these thousands of opportunities can be a little overwhelming, which is why we do programs like Citizen Science Month. That gives you a few key things that you can get started with today, like SciQuest, or like any of our featured projects that we have through the month. And Citizen Science Month wouldn't be possible without Arizona State University, the Network of the National Library of Medicine, and the All of Us Research Program. They are huge supporters of Citizen Science Month to make programs like this possible. So that being said, I'm going to show you a quick video about what All of Us.
Caroline, can you reshare with audio?
It should be playing. Let's see. Do it one more time. Yeah, I'm sharing my sound. We're cranking this thing up. Make sure it works.
This is Kim. Kim lives Ray lives on a farm. He loves playing kickball with his grandkids, but lately he's gotten a little slower and been visiting the doctor a lot more often. This is Kim. Kim lives in the city. She loves to exercise, cook healthy meals, and can't remember the last time she called in sick. They're both people, but not all people are the same. And yet, when we visit the doctor, our treatments don't look that different. Why is that? Because we just don't have enough information to do it better. Until now. Enter All of Us, the research program based on precision medicine. Precision medicine is a revolutionary new approach to treating and preventing disease that's personalized instead of one size fits all. By gathering health data from 1 million people like Ray and Kim and Trevor and Samir, our country's best researchers will be able to develop treatments that are as unique and complex as we are. With this new information, doctors will have a better understanding of disease so they can innovate the next great breakthroughs in medicine. Once enough people join, suddenly everything changes. Information becomes clear, patterns emerge, and simple data transforms into life-saving knowledge. This means that Ray and Kim's children and their children's children can live longer, healthier lives. By becoming one of the first 1 million people to volunteer, you can help reshape the entire future of healthcare for generations to come. If we can figure out how to fly, put a man on the moon, and connect the entire world, surely we should be able to improve the future of healthcare, not just for Ray and Kim or even you, but for all of us. Sign up at joinallofus.org. The future of health begins with you. Meet.
So there you have it. That was the All of Us Research Program. They're a big supporter of Citizen Science Month. They helped make this event possible, as well as all of our other Citizen Science Month events. And you can find resources, events, so much more at citizensciencemonth.org, including this event calendar, which today's event was on, shout out. And there are a number of featured projects. SciQuest is actually on this page, but if you're looking for more opportunities to get involved, SciStarter.org/NLM is a great place to start. You can help Alzheimer's researchers from your own home just by classifying data via an online game. You can document weather and climate change in your community. You can monitor light pollution data and so much more. Any of these featured projects are a great fit and a lot of fun. So that being said, April is Citizen Science Month. We're so delighted to be hosting Bradley today for him to talk to us a little bit about SciQuest. And I'll stop sharing my screen here and I'll pass the mic to Bradley for some introductions. Bradley, take it away.
Great. Thanks, Caroline. Can everyone hear me okay? It's sort of a different setup here. Great. Well, yeah, so I'm excited to talk to everyone today about SciQuest, which is a project we launched here at North Carolina State University year and a half, 2 years ago now. And I've got some slides, but before we get into that, just a basic overview of what the goal is here. So SciQuest is a citizen science project about citizen science, which is kind of meta and maybe sort of odd, but the reason we're doing that, the reason we want to know more about citizen scientists and we want to partner with citizen scientists to study citizen science is that, as you can see from all the amazing resources that SciStarter, for instance, is putting together and organizing, citizen science has become a really big topic that a lot of people are involved in. And there are so many new ways to participate now. You can share health data like in All of Us. You can document, the diversity of your basement with iNaturalist. You can, classify images of cells with stall catchers. There's so many different ways to participate, and there's so many people that are participating. And I and the rest of our team at NC State see a lot of promise for citizen science, not only in, collecting data and analyzing data at a bigger level than scientists could on their own. I think there's really a lot of potential for some more broad societal value of citizen science. If you've got a lot of people who maybe science didn't seem that interesting to in the classroom, but are participating in citizen science and feeling empowered and learning new tools and new skills about science and getting excited about science and doing so through this new way of participating through citizen science. And so we're really interested to see whether that's going on, to see kind of the impact of these projects, and also just to explore like what all's out there. I mean, there's so many different projects and there's so many ways to participate. And our goal is to use SciQuest to just learn more about the experience of being a citizen science volunteer. And we've already collected some cool data about that. We'd love to get some more. So anyone watching, definitely feel free to participate in SciQuest. Even if you're not participating in citizen science, that's part of our interest too, is like if people are curious about it, but aren't quite ready to take the leap, what are some barriers that are standing in the way? Yeah, that's our project. It's all about who citizen scientists are, and we would love anyone to participate. So with that, I'll just go ahead and share my screen and just share just a little bit more about what we're doing here at SciQuest and what we're learning. So like I said, yeah, SciQuest is a citizen science project about citizen science. We've deployed it here on SciStarter, which is an amazing platform for people across lots of different projects to get involved. And so what's the goal? Why is SciQuest the answer to all this? Well, because we're not the only group that's interested in evaluating citizen scientists, but the way that people evaluate citizen scientists typically have some shortcomings. And so the first one of those is that they're boring, right? If you've ever been asked to take a survey about anything, it usually looks something like this bubble sheet with a bunch of Likert scales from agree to disagree. It's maybe not the most interesting thing in the world. And we thought, what can we do to make surveys, evaluations a little more interesting? And so we came up with some fun graphics and other kinds of designs using sliding scales and questions that get at sort of more of our feelings, in addition to just like these, quick response attitudes and that kind of thing. So we took a lot of time to try and take questions that we're interested in and questions that, are sort of established ways of evaluating citizen scientists and make them a little more interesting. And so we've got this example here of seeing how people feel about toads, which is kind of funny, but it's we do test all these questions and make sure they're sort of valid and answering questions in a way that is providing something of real value. And this does, and it's just a lot more interesting, I think. Another issue with normal citizen science evaluation is that it doesn't always explain what it's being used for, which is funny because citizen science is all about like getting people involved in science and sharing the process of science and sharing what you learn. But oftentimes, if researchers are interested in like, okay, what is the impact of Project X on people? They'll give these normal sort of more boring surveys, but they won't necessarily, I mean, sometimes they do, but often that sort of philosophy of citizen science of sharing what's being learned doesn't extend to evaluation. And maybe it's because people think, well, like, do the volunteers even care about this? But I think if it's explained, I think volunteers are interested in learning more about the process of citizen science and who participants are and that kind of thing. And so we think it's really important to share the results of SciQuest with participants in the same way that citizen science projects share what's being learned. And so we do that through all kinds of different strategies. One of them is these report backs that you get within the survey. And so you'll answer a bunch of questions and then you'll see how your responses compare to some other people. And so this report back is showing, based on this person's like how frequently they contribute to citizen science and how many projects they've joined, they can compare themselves to the typical citizen scientist who participates about monthly and participates in maybe 2 or so projects. And we've got these little fun categories to define these groups of people. But we also send like a more full report back after you've completed the whole survey. You'll get an email that just says, hey, thanks so much for participating. Here's what we've learned so far. And we think this is really important, and it honors the time that people spend doing surveys. And so probably because surveys are boring and surveys don't explain what the value is of participating in them, they often have low response rates. And so in the past, when I've used these kind of more boring surveys to evaluate citizen scientists on SciStarter, and then I try and survey that same group, 6 months later to see if anything changed, you get about 10% of people that are willing to do that. Which is understandable. I mean, it's a big ask, especially you're just bombarded with surveys and stuff these days on email. And so, if you're getting another boring survey in your inbox and you've got a lot going on, it's easy not to prioritize that, especially if you don't understand why it's useful. And so now with SciQuest, we're getting a lot better retention. So between 50 and 70% of people go on from one survey on SciQuest to the next. And we're really excited about that because these low response rates, they limit the insight that a survey can provide, right? If you've only got a small sliver of the population that you're collecting data on, the data only applies to that sliver. And so if these people who respond to surveys, that 10% of people respond to survey, maybe there's something unique about those people that doesn't apply to the bigger population of volunteers. And the lower the retention rate is, the less you can say about volunteers as a whole. And so that's why we're taking this approach that we have so far. We've got 3 modules out. Modules are just what we call different surveys, basically, that are kind of grouped by a theme. And so the first one, the journey prep module, we've got about 200 people who've done it so far. Once I clean it and get out all the test surveys that I've done, or sometimes people take the same survey twice by accident. We've got 89 who've gone on to do the second one, the nature module, and then 60 who've gone on to do the environment module. And so there's still some drop off, but that's to be expected. And it's a lot better than normal surveys. And so, we're really excited about this moving forward as more and more people participate, and as we have more data to share about, like, hey, this is what we've learned so far. This is why your time is valuable, to taking your time to do these surveys. And so what I thought I'd do is just go through a little bit about what we've learned from each of these surveys. Each survey, like I said, has a different theme. And so the journey prep was all about just sort of some background info on citizen scientists, on the participants, how many projects they do, how often they participate. and a bit about their motivations. And so if we look at sociodemographics, we see these SciQuesters is what we're calling participants in SciQuest. They're a little more likely to identify as women than men. The majority are white. We see 8% Asian, 8% Black, 5% Hispanic, 7% other. Average age is 41. A bit over half have a bachelor's degree, and most of them live in the US. And if you just, as some background, compared to the general US population, which, as you can see, most of the people who participate in SciQuest are from the US. Obviously, there are a few more women that do SciQuest than are present in the general population. SciQuesters are a little bit more likely to be white. They're a little bit older. They're definitely more educated. And these are trends we tend to see in citizen science in general, is that citizen scientists are a little bit self-selecting. They're a little bit homogeneous. And so we're interested in learning more about that, and also learning, what barriers prevent people from getting involved in citizen science, and whether we can remove those barriers, because we want citizen science to be for everyone and to be a place that everyone's comfortable in and everyone feels like they have access to. And so just getting this kind of background sociodemographic data is helpful for that. Something else we thought was pretty interesting. So about half of the people who do SciQuest work in science, technology, engineering, math, those kinds of fields, but about half do something else. And so that's pretty exciting, because one of the goals of citizen science is getting new people involved in science. And so if our SciQuest surveys are showing that the people on SciStarter, about half of them aren't professional scientists, basically, that's a pretty good sign to me, that citizen science on SciStarter is engaging people in science who might not do that as their actual day job, who are picking this up as a hobby or learning something new. That gets a little more likely, right, when you're working as an artist or a lawyer or a realtor, something like that. About a little less than half of the people who do SciQuest are new to citizen science, and so that's really exciting. We're definitely getting a lot of people who are just signing up for SciStarter for the first time and then go on and do SciQuest and haven't done any citizen science yet, but are interested in it. And so that'll be really interesting to sort of follow those people if they keep taking SciQuest surveys, to learn more about, what projects did they end up joining? And how often do they participate? And we'll get into some of the more free response questions too, what barriers are keeping you from getting involved, or why are you interested in these kinds of projects and not those kinds of projects, that kind of thing. Of those who have participated, most join between 3 and 4 projects and participate about once a month. These are the kinds of projects people have reported doing so far, and have broken them up into their discipline, what type of citizen science project it is. And we see that these ecology projects are the most common. Projects like iNaturalist, Chimpanzee is a project on Zooniverse, I think. Project Squirrel, eBird, these are all pretty popular projects. But we also see projects from some other disciplines, like Globe Observer is an earth science project. Stall Catchers, like Caroline mentioned earlier, is a health project. There's a bit of astronomy projects. So anyway, this kind of gives you a sense for what participants in SciQuest are doing. And it's interesting because this lines up pretty well with what I've seen when I've analyzed all the projects that exist on SciStarter. About half the projects on SciStarter are ecology projects. And we see that about half the projects SciQuesters are joining are ecology projects. So pretty representative of what's out there on SciStarter. Here's another one of those examples of this report back, where we see people broken up into 4 different categories based on how many projects they've joined, how frequently they participate. We see that most people are hatchlings, which is what we call people who have never participated or have participated in just one project, 1 or 2 projects. I think our line there includes the 2, and participate monthly or less. So people who have never done it or do it occasionally. The next biggest category, though, is kind of the opposite, or super users who are participating in citizen science daily or weekly, and doing 3, 4, up to some of the surveys we've analyzed, people report doing 20 projects, which is pretty amazing. That's more than I do, but it's pretty remarkable. Some people are just really dedicated citizen scientists and are just really into a whole bunch of different projects, and we're really interested in what impact that has on people. If you're participating in a bunch of different projects across disciplines, are you learning new things? Are you like finding new connections across different disciplines? I think it's really exciting to see the different ways people engage in citizen science. And we see that it's a little less likely to be a specialist, interestingly. So people who do just a single project or two, but do it a lot. And then grazers are a little more common, doing a lot of projects, but not very frequently. And then the last question we asked in Journey Prep had to do with motivations. That's a big part of my graduate work is the motivations of citizen scientists. And this is just among a subgroup of the people who've done the Journey Prep module. So these are people who are part of volunteer groups. So rather than participating just because they love citizen science, they sought out SciStarter independently, wanted to get involved. Increasingly, maybe some of the people who are watching this right now are part of these, what we're calling facilitator groups, which are people who are members of like a volunteer group with a school or a church or a corporation, whose volunteer group is sort of encouraging them to get involved in citizen science in some way. And I'm really interested in the motivation of these people because, it's possible, if your school group or your company is encouraging you to do citizen science, you might do it, but you might not be maybe you're doing it just to get some volunteer hours for work or whatever. That's a different kind of a motivation than someone who's doing citizen science because they're just like all in on studying, house centipedes or something like that for a project. And research shows that there's different kinds of motivations. There's more like internal motivations coming from yourself versus external motivations, which is like sort of being encouraged by others. They result in really different learning. And so if you're doing something because it's like of your own volition, you're a lot more likely to learn from that experience and to stay engaged in that activity. And so it presents these kinds of volunteers with volunteer groups present an interesting opportunity to see whether those people who are sort of feeling like they kind of have to do citizen science drop out more frequently, or if they come into the project feeling like, well, I kind of have to do this, and then they start doing it and they get really interested in it, their motivations can actually shift to become more internal. And as a result, they have a lot more likelihood of gaining something valuable from that experience. And so anyway, this is just kind of a preliminary way to start understanding some of those questions about motivation. But we see among these volunteers from those facilitator groups, from the schools and churches, most of them participate because both because they want to and because they're supposed to. Of those who chose just one of these, more say that they want to participate because they want to. We also see a little more than 20% of people say they're participating because they're supposed to. So we are seeing a lot of, at least a minority of people who are getting involved more because they feel like they have to than because of some internal reason. And so it'll be interesting with SciQuest if those people keep taking SciQuest modules to see if those motivations change, if they stay the same, and how much citizen science they go on to do, or whether they drop out. It's just an interesting way to test these questions about motivation. All right, and then I'll go through these other modules a little more quickly because I know I want to save some time for questions. So the second module was focused on nature, and kind of the big takeaway was that most SciQuesters are at least somewhat concerned about problems in nature, like environmental degradation, that kind of thing. Most feel at least somewhat connected to nature, and most value nature. But there was a wide range of opinions. There are a lot of different perspectives on these different aspects of nature. So for instance, one of our questions had a whole row of different smiley emojis, and it asked, how concerned are you about and how environmental issues could impact, and then there are 3 different possibilities: how it could impact you, could impact other people, and then could impact animals and plants. And most people chose these like at least somewhat concerned emoji faces, indicating that, yeah, most SciQuesters are at least somewhat concerned about environmental problems. This next question was about environmental connection, and so you could slide these 2 overlapping circles and have them be really overlapping or not overlapping at all. And those 2 circles represent you and nature, and it's just a simple graphic way to share, yeah, how connected you feel to the natural world. And we see, again, most people feel at least somewhat connected to nature. 60% of people had these mostly overlapping circles. But as you can see, there's still a wide range of opinions and feelings about nature connection. This was another question getting at nature connection. We just had these words: forest, garden, and pond. And we said, you're this person, this orange person or this blue person, slide yourself where you want to be. So you can either be really far away from the forest or really close to the forest. And we see, again, most people want to be fairly close to the forest. Gardens a little more popular, ponds a little less popular. Maybe that's because people didn't want to be all the way in the pond. But anyway, it's just another way of measuring connection to nature. And so when we did our report back for this, we see, so along the x-axis here is connection to nature. So as you go further right, you're more connected to nature. And the y-axis is environmental concern. So as you go further up, you're more concerned about the environment. And so we see that most people have at least a medium to high level of concern about the environment, and at least a high to medium level of connection to nature. And we had, again, like little descriptions for each of these different categories. But we see also there's at least some people who are just, I don't feel very connected to nature, and I don't feel very concerned about the environment. And so I think it's important, and it's good that we're getting people across this spectrum, because a lot of, for instance, we're interested in these environmental questions because, like we saw from the Journey Prep module, a lot of the citizen science people are doing is focused on the environment. And a lot of projects have a goal of getting new people engaged in the environment, getting people to feel more connected to the natural world. And so if projects are only engaging with people who already come into those projects really caring about the environment and really caring about nature, you're not going to see any changes in their attitudes because they're at the ceiling, right? They don't have anywhere to go. But if projects are engaging people across the spectrum and getting at least some people who are like, I just don't feel that connected to the natural world. I stay inside for the most part. I don't have a lot of experiences in the outdoors that I've appreciated. If you get that person into citizen science, it's at least possible that experience would lead them to be like, you know what, maybe I do feel a little more connected to nature now that I hear the tweeting of the birds outside, and I know it's a Carolina wren or something like that. So anyway, those are the kinds of things we're interested in. And I'll go a little more quickly through some of the rest of these. This was a question about, it was a whole narrative. You read a story about a fish that was posing some issues for the construction of a dam, and you had to choose like whose rights you thought were more important. This was a way to assess wildlife valuation, which is a common metric that people study among citizen scientists. And we saw that 3/4 of people had more of like a nature-focused wildlife valuation, and 1/4 of people had more of a human-focused environmental wildlife valuation. And then we also had these opportunities, this is the last part of this module, some opportunities to share it, for SciQuesters to share in their own words what impact they felt like citizen science had on their perspectives about nature. And we see a number of different things. So here's someone who says, I've been working on Globe at Night for a while, and I am now an advocate of the International Dark Sky Association. So you see this person reflecting in their own words and saying that, like, yeah, Globe at Night has like led me to be more interested in dark sky preservation. We see somebody else who says, I've always been interested in chimps, so being able to watch them for hours and camera trap footage is the next best thing to actually being in the forest with them. So we see this person saying that like, oh yeah, citizen science is like allowing me to connect more with this aspect of nature that I really like. Last quote here, since doing citizen science, I prefer being outside more and interacting with nature to learn more about it. So there you go. That's kind of what I was getting at is one of the goals projects have is they want people to have some positive experience as a result of doing their project. And we see across 3 different quotes, you'll hear people reporting that. On the other hand, we see some people who say their experience hasn't had an impact on them, which is also important. So one person says, my participation in citizen science confirms my views of nature. So that's someone who already had, some kind of perspective on nature, maybe a positive perspective on nature. And they came into the project and it didn't change them. It just reinforced what they already believed. Kind of similarly, this person says the cause and effect goes in the other direction. My thoughts and interaction with nature impacted my interest in citizen science. So again, somebody who's driven to do something in nature that led them to seek out citizen science. And then we see this last person who says, oh, 0, there's no there's no impact on my view of nature because I just do space projects, and that makes sense. Yeah, and so that's overall what we're seeing from module 1, from module 2 rather, the nature module. And then I won't go into too much detail about this, but this is the 3rd module, the environment module. Again, we see SciQuesters are clustering more towards the more positive interest in the environment, interest in helping the environment. But again, there was a wide range of perspectives. People tended to prefer nature activities a little more than non-nature activities. We had some various types of environment-related activities, like going to the nature museum. That was more popular than bird watching, but still overall, it's all pretty popular. We had people compare how often they do environmental behaviors like recycling, and we had them compare their perspectives to some cartoon people we made up who had their own little stories. We saw that the person with the medium level of environmental behavior was the most popular. We had some stories about, if you're just like walking down the sidewalk and you've got this can that you've finished and you're through with it and you don't see any recycling bins, like, what do you do with it? Are you going to like hold on to it, as long as it takes to find a recycling bin, or you're just going to be like, whatever, and just throw it in the trash? And we see that, it's fairly evenly split, or it's about 2/3 of people were willing to hold the can until they found the recycling bin. Or at least those are the people who say they would do that. But still, plenty of people were just like, you know what, I throw it in the garbage. It's not worth it. And last one, we have some specific types of behaviors that can help the environment, and whether people did them. And we see that about half of people grow plants, about 10% have done litter cleanups, and a quarter have taken time out to try and improve wildlife habitat. We've got some more quadrants here. This time the axes are interest in nature and environmental action. We see that this time actually the most popular one isn't the high in both categories. It's high interest in nature, but a little lower environmental action. And so, yeah, interestingly, no altruists, no one who does a lot of environmental action and is not interested in nature. That kind of makes sense. Maybe there's not a lot of people who are willing to spend a lot of time dedicating themselves to the environment if they're not really interested in the environment. But still interesting to see. This was the last question. It was about how some different photos of aspects of nature make people feel. And overall, people were like, I am not that scared of, for instance, a picture of a toad or a picture of a forest. And I think it actually feels pleasant and calm. And here are some qualitative, what we call qualitative responses, these free responses. Again, asking people more about their experiences with citizen science and how it interfaces with their views of the environment. eBird and iNaturalist have taught me a bit about biodiversity and the importance of nature and protecting what we have. I've always been interested in the environment and its protection, but citizen science helps to support the beliefs and helps me maintain awareness. Since I started with Shore Watch, I found getting out and about extremely interesting. It's amazing what you can find if you look. Someone even reported taking the survey led them to feel differently, which was interesting. They said, after taking the survey, I feel like I should be more involved in improving the environment for other species and cleaning up my neighborhood. And that's interesting because we aren't trying to get anyone to do anything in particular. We're just interested in just what their honest opinions were, but that's an interesting response. And we've even got some critiques, which are great and make a lot of sense. This person said, this set of questions does not connect with my environmental care. Yeah, I'd put the can in the trash if there's no recycling bin instead of carrying it. I'm well aware of how the waste system fails us. We fail ourselves. And so this person's pointing out that, these little personal pro-environmental changes you make in your behavior might not have that big of an impact, which can be true. And even more broadly speaking, the questions that we ask in SciQuest, they're never going to be perfect. They're never going to apply to everyone. That's true of any survey. And that's why these opportunities for free response, I think, are really important and really provide richer context for understanding some of the trends we'll eventually see as we ask people to take more modules. And then overall, we started analyzing sort of how different demographics or different groups, how their answers differ. And so far, we've seen that facilitator groups, so again, these volunteers from school, church, or corporate groups, they tend to have a little bit less experience than the people who are independent of a group, the people who are just like seeking out citizen science on their own. And these facilitator group members are likely to be a little bit less engaged in nature and the environment. So they're scoring a little lower on these measures of like concern about the environment from modules, from the nature and environment modules. And so that's interesting and actually kind of exciting because it means that these facilitator groups might be attracting people to citizen science who are a little different than typical citizen scientists, people who, are less experienced doing things like citizen science and who might come in with like less interest in the topics. And so, again, if projects are able to get people more engaged in these things, then these new populations from facilitator groups could be a great group to try and connect with. Okay, and then the next steps, we're making more modules. We're going to have some modules focused even more specifically on motivation, even though Journey Prep talked about it a little bit. And we want to try to do some like reassessments. So like, 6 months, a year down the line, have people answer that question again about, would they throw the can in the recycling bin or not? And one possibility is that people might be more likely to do the more, to put it in the recycling bin, to hold it until they found a recycling bin, if they've spent a lot of time over the last year doing environment-related citizen science. There's projects like Debris Tracker that are like specifically focused on like categorizing different types of trash. And if you spend hours during the month or during the year doing stuff like that, you might be more attuned to like, I'm gonna like think more about like the best way I can take this item of refuse and do something with it that I think is more positive for the environment. But of course, that could not happen. And we're just interested in just what these experiences mean to people and how they influence people, no matter what direction it goes or what, how it looks. So that's all I've got. Love to take any questions. If you haven't participated in SciQuest, or if you've only done, 1 or 2 of the 3 modules that are currently available, please go ahead and do it. As soon as you participate, you'll get an email automatically reported to you that says what module you did and gives you, explains kind of what I've just gone through is how your responses compare to other people and what we're learning so far from the project. And shout out to NSF for sponsoring this project, and NC State for being my graduate school home over the last couple of years. So yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Bradley. I'll start off with the first question, and everyone else, the people watching on Facebook or the people watching on Zoom, don't be shy about getting your questions in the chat or in the comments. But my first question for Bradley is, what's next for you? Because you're done now, right? You finished up the PhD?
Well, so I turned in my dissertation on Monday, and I'll be defending in 2 weeks, 2 weeks from today. And so, yeah, I'm going to be a postdoc, still working kind of in the citizen science world. I've got a contract position at Oregon State to do some work on using citizen science to answer questions about how trophic interactions work, sort of more of an ecological side of citizen science, but looking at who eats whom, basically, what species eat what other species, and using iNaturalist to answer that question. So yeah.
Got it. And then that's so exciting. I remember now, you sent me an invite to your defense. I will be there. I'm very excited. I'll be there on Zoom.
Great.
But I'm also curious, so if you're moving on to Oregon State, are you going to close up shop with SciQuest? Like, when's the deadline for the people watching to participate?
Yeah, so SciQuest is going to keep going. Other folks at NC State are going to start taking the reins a little more, and I'll kind of pass it off to them over the summer. So yeah, SciQuest isn't going anywhere, and in fact, there's some big plans for what we're going to do next with it, and maybe some future grad students will be sending you emails asking folks to participate in SciQuest.
Got it. And what's the best way for people to follow along? Just joining SciQuest on SciStarter, I guess. That's the best way for them to stay in the loop.
Yeah, exactly. It's joining SciQuest, and as long as you start with the Journey Prep module, which is that first one, we will ask for your email address in that, and then once we have your email address, we send updates via email, basically, which you can unsubscribe from anytime you want, but they're not too many, and we hope they're interesting.
Fantastic. And I see a question right here from Adrian. They want to know, if someone was given a day out of time to do more of what they normally do in their free time, what proportion would they spend on science learning / watching compared to citizen science, do you think? So just kind of an opinion question there about how much time you think people would spend on science learning versus citizen science if they had a lot of free time.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I don't know if I'd necessarily put citizen science separate from science learning. At least me personally, when I'm doing citizen science, I often am learning. Like when I was working on our porch yesterday, and this crazy, I later figured out as a wasp, but it's like, is this insect, which was like a normal looking wasp, I guess. It was kind of slender, but it had this, I mean, it looked like a stinger, but it was like 3 inches. It was like as long as the whole wasp, and it was just like flying. And I'm like, what on earth is that? So I took a picture and put it on iNaturalist, and pretty quickly a few people were like, oh, that's an ichneumid wasp, and that long stinger looking thing is its ovipositor, and it uses it to lay eggs like deep in wood and that kind of thing. And so anyway, I mean, that for me was a time where I was doing citizen science. I was reporting this finding, and because it was this crazy thing, I like sought out some more information about it and had some other people on SciStarter, or sorry, on iNaturalist, like sharing some more details about what this thing was, and it was super cool. So, I mean, in terms of proportion of their time, I'm sure it depends on the person, what they're interested in, but I hope for a lot of people, a citizen science experience is also an opportunity to be learning about science in like kind of a more hands-on way, even than like watching a documentary or reading a book.
I love it. That's the perfect answer. Yeah, citizen science and learning can be one and the same depending on how you approach it. That's awesome. Before we get to our next question, I just wanted to let everyone know I put the link to the survey in the chat, and we're also going to add it to the comments on Facebook. Our evaluators would want you to fill this out because you can win a free book potentially, so please fill it out. It also really helps us figure out like the best ways to do Citizen Science Month in the future. So please do that survey. It looks like we have a follow-up question. Adrian wants to know, Is there a simple relationship between free time and participation? Being retired helps.
Yeah, it's a great question. Yes, there is a relationship between having more free time and volunteering in general. I'm not sure if I've seen a study that looks at that specifically for citizen science, but volunteering in general, people who have more free time, which often corresponds with people who might like have a higher income, or they might not have like a lot of children at home, having more time resources, basically, where you're not like watching kids, or having more money resources, which maybe allows you to like, have a little bit more free time or take vacation or something like that. Those factors do tend to correspond with participating in volunteer activities. And then with citizen science in particular, historically, the people who did citizen science, especially like bird projects, were like way more likely to be retired. In part because, being retired gives you a lot of free time to go bird watching and that kind of thing. As more types of citizen science have come out, especially more online types of projects, like SciStarter, it's a little less drawing from the retired groups, and definitely these facilitator groups like corporations and schools and that kind of thing are drawing from younger crowds. So I mean, I'd say overall it's true that having more free time does correlate with more participation, but it's pretty dependent on the context and like the type of project. So yeah.
Awesome. And I want to open up the chance to my colleagues Roland and Emma to ask a question if you all have one. If not, I have one last one.
You took one of my questions. I was curious what was happening next. I'm trying to think of another, but I lost it a couple of seconds or minutes ago. So I'll let you know in a second if I can think of it. Roland, you got anything?
All right, I'll ask my last question then. This is a selfish one as a PhD student. So I'm curious, Bradley, what's your number one tip for making surveys more interesting? If you can only do one thing to make your survey better, what should you do?
Oh, I hate to not give one tip, but I have 6 tips that are like way better. And let me pull something up to give that to you. So part of designing SciQuest was we wanted to make it like more fun, right? But we realized we're like, what does fun actually mean? And so I did a big literature review of about 100 different studies on fun, which sounds maybe a little bit frivolous, but like, if you want something to be engaging, and a lot of citizen science projects, like in the definition of their project, they say like, we want this to be a fun way to contribute to science. I'm like, well, we want to figure out what that means and if that's true. And basically from that literature review, we found that there are, I think I said 6, there are 5 themes that make something fun. And so autonomy, social connection, playfulness, challenge, no, it's 6, I wrote it down right. Autonomy, social connection, playfulness, challenge, transport, and curiosity. And those are kind of like jargony words, but basically like autonomy is just like being given the chance to kind of carve your own path, to solve something in your own way, not be like forced to like do something exactly like this. So that's really important. You don't have fun when somebody's like telling you what to do, so autonomy is really important. And in surveys, so that, means providing like free choice answers, for instance. Social connection, that's pretty self-explanatory. Ways to connect with others. You tend to have a lot more fun when you're with someone or when you're interacting, or at the very least, when you're like comparing yourself to another person, like we do in the surveys, of looking at like, well, here's what the overall group of SciQuesters does, and here's me. And maybe someday we'll have some forums or something where people can talk more about their citizen science experiences on SciStarter. What else? Yeah, playfulness. That's like a little harder to design in a survey. or there's like a balance there, right? Of like, you don't want people to think like SciQuest is like a serious tool that we're trying to use to get data, and also it should be fun. But we wouldn't want something to be so playful that people are like, why am I even doing this? Like, what's the purpose? But that playfulness for us comes in with some of these like cartoon avatars, and even like a little bit of humor and some of the report backs. That's obviously, yeah, it's another piece of fun. Yeah, challenge. You know, you think about sports or something like that. Part of the reason playing sports is fun is it's like a challenge. You know, you're trying to win, or you're trying to run further than you have before, or faster, or lift more weights, or whatever it is. And so having some dimension of like people being able to assess where they are and how well they're doing, and if they're improving or if they're gaining or if they're changing, that's an important aspect of fun. And in surveys, yeah, again, we're kind of looking at like using these report backs to be an example of like, well, here's where you were, here's like a benchmark, and then like, you know, when you take the survey again in 6 months, hey, here's how this changed. Like, wonder why that changed. Let's, you know, what do you know why that changed? Transport. That one comes from like sort of more like imaginative aspects of fun. And so like video games, that's often like a dimension of fun they really focus on, is being so like engrossed in something, or not just video, like any kind of game really, or like narratives. That's a way to make something transportative. Yeah, anything that like makes you feel like in the flow state, that's transport. And then, yeah, that last one, curiosity. Yeah, you know, you want to engage with what people are interested in and what they themselves might be wondering about. And so with SciQuest, at the end of the surveys, we're always like, you know, if you have any ideas for something you're interested in about citizen scientists, like let us know, and we'll see if we can make a module about that. So yeah, fun. It's like the most boring way to to define fun is with like a bunch of jargony characteristics, but that's fun. Yeah, that's what it is.
And then I both love that list. So thank you, Bradley. I was taking notes. So that's going to be something I'll be implementing in my surveys in the very near future.
Cool.
And also, speaking of surveys, we put the survey in the chat for y'all to fill out to evaluate this event. And if you all want to keep the fun going and you haven't participated in SciQuest yet, head on over to SciStarter.org/SciQuest so you can live the magic of what Bradley just said for fun surveys. Bradley, I think we're right at time. So unless you have any closing thoughts, I feel like we'll let everybody go and we'll let them go participate in SciQuest.
Beautiful. Yeah. And if anyone has follow-up questions, feel free to, I don't know if I can, oh yeah, I can just drop my email in the chat here. Yeah, thanks. I know some of the people who are watching are SciQuest participants already, so thank you. Your efforts are valuable and we really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you, Bradley. See you in 2 weeks when you defend your dissertation.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, Caroline. Good to see you.
Bye, all.